Welcome to Hidden Human, the podcast where we explore the stories behind the business leader. Get ready to hear insights from business leaders speaking candidly about how they became who they are today and the lessons they learned along the way. And now, here's your host, leadership coach and speaker, Kelly Meerbot.
Welcome to the space where we reveal our personal humanity to reconnect with our shared humanity. This podcast episode has been months in the making. I mean, Diaz and Zorrilla are two, actually, Jos and I have known each other since 2014. And as an aside to the audience, she just corrected me on how to pronounce her name because I've been calling her the wrong name the whole time. So I will toss it over to them, but they are the fabulous, incredible hosts of the new podcast, Basic and Boujie, which I have spent the last 2 days with it, and it's hilarious. If you don't subscribe, you better. But I'm going to turn it over to them and have them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about, first of all, where did the name come from?
You want to go, Jos?
Yeah.
Sure. So my name is Jos Diaz. The name really came from kind of our personalities, right? My sister had been calling me like jokingly basic for years. So it kind of just stuck. Like anything she would see basic, she would just be like, that's you're basic. And then Melanie, her Twitter handle is Boujie. Like it's her Twitter handle has Boujie in the name. And then one day we just got to talking after an Instagram post and we're like, why not start a podcast and call it Basic and Boujie? And like, it just flew from there. It's been so easy, so much fun. So yeah, that's where it came from. And Melanie, you can add anything I might've missed in that explanation.
No, I mean, I feel like the name matches our personality. Like how many times people come here, we have people that come here like, okay, I see why you're bougie. I'm just really extra for no reason at all.
Me too.
And that's where the bouginess comes from.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into that. Trust me. That when I heard the name of your podcast, I was like, oh my God, that's me. Like, except that I hate pumpkin spice lattes. Like I just don't.
I can't do pumpkin stuff.
I love pumpkin spice latte. Love.
And that's why I love you.
Yeah.
We love you. So, okay, besides pumpkin spice lattes, what makes you basic? Like, let's define it for people who may not know that term. Like, I always like to make sure everybody's kind of included and understands the context. So, basic, just define it for me.
I feel like it's just, I'm super easygoing, and I just like your average stuff, like pumpkin spice lattes. That's my bougiest feature for Starbucks. I love Ray Dunn, and I'm not ashamed to admit my like super silly collection of things that say words on them, and it's just a Ray Dunn piece. Wow. Like leggings and a bun and a scarf in the wintertime. And it's just like, if you look up like anatomy of a basic girl, you could just transpose her face and put mine on it. And it's just, if you know me, you know that I'm just so basic, but I'm easygoing. And I think that's like my best feature.
Yeah. She doesn't correct me on her name pronunciation for what? I mean, almost 7 years. I still can't get over that. Okay. All right. Now, Mel.
Yes.
You tell me why you're bougie, and then I'll tell you why I'm bougie.
Okay. So everyone around me called me bougie. I didn't realize I was bougie until other people were like, why do you have to be so extra? Why can't we go to this hotel? Or why do we have to go to this one? Why do we have to be in the penthouse? Why can't I just have standards without just having high standards? It turned into a bougie thing, which I'm 100% okay with now. I embrace it. You know, at this point, I know my friends know me well enough. I'm bougie. Don't invite me to no BS. I want to go to an event, not just like a regular something over there. Like, I like all of the extraness, but I also have, the splash of basic in my life. Yeah, I choose when to be bougie and when to be basic, because bougie can be expensive.
Yeah, bougie can be expensive, and you can toggle back. You know, the thought that I'm having as I'm listening to both of you is, why do we have to be one or the other? You know,
Right.
like you can still be bougie and wear leggings and a bun. Like I do that all the time because I'm a filthy human and I don't wash my hair all the time. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But
And
it's
we'll say that, like, I'm bougie with a splash of basic, and she's basic with a splash of bougie.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm the same way. Like if you're making me come out of the house, especially in the pandemic, like it better be a memorable moment. Like there better be something memorable about it. But yeah, my best friends call me bougie all the time. Like we were staying down at Rehoboth Beach last September. Sorry, a pandemic brain. Because
I know you just wiped out that last year.
Yeah.
no idea. So one of them like made this, I forget. Oh, what was it? Oh, it was jalapeno poppers. And I was like, oh, are you making a dipping sauce with it? And she goes, no, you bougie bitch.
Right. Like this is not enough. It's not enough that I made you.
Yeah. So
You need a dipping sauce.
right? Of course you need a dipping sauce with
Yeah.
jalapeno poppers, don't you? Like
Yeah. I
think
would think so.
so. Okay.
That's an appropriate question.
Yeah, exactly. So the podcast is a couple of months old, right?
I can't believe we're even saying that.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's really incredible. And like, I remember when Jos came to me and she was like, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. I was like, you have to be on mine. Like, let's go. So I was really excited when you started it. But how did y'all, I know you brainstormed a bunch of topics, and like one of my favorite things that Mel said was, I'm a professional half-asser, which is why she's and Mel, I can be that way too, which is why I have a lot of people in my life who are like, I call them my rumble strips. They're like,
Keep it together. Keep you back in that lane.
right, get back in your lane. So you guys both of you came up with a wide range of topics, all of which I was like, pretending like you could hear me. I was like, yes, and that too. So let's talk horrible bosses, shall we?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, okay, all right, all of us have worked in corporate. We're not going to kind of name where we worked because, you know, people can figure that out, doing a little Google search. But what I was thinking while you both were telling these stories, and by the way, I've had bosses who have talked to me like they're children too. And I do agree with you. I think that, you know, if somebody is not wearing the quote unquote pants in their relationship at home, they're projecting that at work. Like that's typically what happens. But why do you think these horrible bosses like slip through the cracks? What do you think it is?
I think they know where the bones are buried. What else do you need them for? If it's like, is it like, if you're a horrible boss because your attitude is bad with your employees, or are you a horrible boss because your attitude is bad and you're lazy and you're just like completely useless to the company at that point? I just felt like, oh, you must know somebody's dirt, or know something that has kept you safe at this job, because I can't see any other reason why you would be here still for this long.
Yeah,
I agree, because I think it's they have the connections, and those connections are keeping them there. So somehow the company feels like they're an asset because of what they know or who they know, not necessarily the role and what they're doing for the actual responsibilities and duties of their title. It's just who they know.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage everybody to go and listen to their episode on horrible bosses, but just for our purposes, give me, and I'll share one too. In fact, I'll start because I always like to like model what I'm looking for. But I had this one boss in radio, and this is so embarrassing, but we had to take a client out, and he was the head of like a big car dealer, right? And we're at this sports bar, and I'm talking to this guy, right? I'm talking to the head of the dealership, and my boss, who's the head of sales, is over at the bar, and I'm not really watching him. I'm engaged in this conversation. And then all of a sudden I see the head of the car dealer's eyes dart to the bar and stay there. And I'm like, what is happening over there? And I don't want to look, but I'm gonna look. And when I did, I was like, damn, that's something I can't unsee. He was literally sitting on a bar stool with his legs apart while a 20-year-old waitress was doing a blowjob shot off of his lap. in the middle of the phone. And I looked at the client and I go, well, we do like to mix business and pleasure. I mean, like, what do you say?
What do you say?
Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be somebody who threw him under the bus, but I was like raging underneath because this was a big deal, big commission for me. And anybody who knows working in corporate commission is a big deal. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself, like, how could you have somebody who's supposed to be a leader behaving like that? And literally I was able to save it because I had a great relationship with this guy. I was able to kind of play it off, but I was just like, what is happening right now?
It's loud. Why does he still work here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's not the first time that's happened.
Oh, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So who knows what he was doing behind closed doors, but
Mhm.
anyway, okay. So for you two, give me a concrete example of a horrible boss encounter, and how'd you recover from it?
Oof. I have to think.
So while Mel's thinking, Jeff,
So one of my, I think right at the top of my head example is something that my boss at the time didn't do and got called out for it, right? Didn't follow up with someone who was, had a connection to someone else, and didn't follow up, like didn't do their due diligence on that. And one of the higher up administrative assistants had reached out and said, what's going on? Why hasn't this been done? And called me and a colleague into the office and blamed us for the thing not getting done, while had us on speakerphone with the administrative assistant. And we're both in I think we were just frozen. This isn't this has to be a simulation of what's happening in our real life right now, because this can't be real. So I mean, shortly after that, I started looking for something else, because if you can throw me under the bus in front of me for something that I didn't even know this thing existed, what are you saying when something really goes down behind my back, So shortly after that, how I fixed that was I just started looking for something else, because I knew that wasn't going to be a long-term situation for me.
No, because
yeah,
you need trust between you and your supervisors, and that obliterates trust like that.
Right.
Your point, again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you can't trust them on this small thing, what are they doing again behind closed doors?
Right.
Now you're up. What'd you do? What happened? What'd you do?
I had to dig in my memory box. So I had a supervisor who, on a personal level, we had a pretty good rapport, talked about outside stuff, talked about work. And the manager of that department was somebody who was he used to hop in, hop out. He was never really there. He would just say okay, these are the things that need to be done, get them done. Fine, not a problem. Didn't micromanage. But he did micromanage a supervisor, but not everybody else. But the supervisor was afraid of the manager. So there was an instance where there was something that happened within the department. I reported it directly to the supervisor. The supervisor knew that the manager would be angry about it, so she didn't tell him. And then fast forward a couple weeks, that story came out, and the manager looked directly at the supervisor and was like, why is this the first time I'm hearing of this? Why didn't you tell me? And she's like, oh, I didn't know. And I'm like, yes, you did. I told you, because I was trying to avoid this. But she just played it no, and that was her go-to. And I kept seeing that replay over and over again, okay, I get it. So you're the shining star when you do everything correctly. But as soon as it was like she was about to get in trouble by her dad, oh God, I gotta tell him this. I'm okay, so either you are not mature enough to be in a position of leadership, because you can't have, that conversation with the manager because you're afraid of him. It's not gonna work. And now your employees don't want to come to you, because if it's going to be a story that you're afraid of telling, it's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly. So, okay. So I keep thinking about the young kids that are, and we're going to call them kids because I'm 45, and Joss, I can't wait to welcome you into your 40s. They have been my favorite decade thus far, but we've got a group of college students that are going to be graduating soon, right? And are looking for a job in, say, corporate America, right? Do you think that there's anything within the interview process that you can do as a job seeker that can kind of filter out these bad bosses and these toxic kind of environments?
I think having a more casual interview style and making people feel comfortable, you're going to start to see some of those true colors come out. Because of course, on your interview, you're on your best behavior, you're sitting up, you've practiced those questions, those answers, you've Googled what are the top 5 questions they ask you in an interview. You're perfect. Yeah. Make that person feel comfortable. Have a little chit chat with them. Their real personality is going to shine through.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions that you would ask them, Mel?
At the end, I would always ask them, what is your expectation of me? What can I do to grow? At what point can I, if I do get this job, at what point can I talk to you about picking up other projects if I am ready and I have time? So I just, even from before even getting the job, I showed interest in growth and letting them know like, hey, I'm going to be here for the long haul, even if I wasn't, but that's the impression that I left.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
I think I agree with Mel. I think you need to be easy with them, right? You have to like make them feel comfortable. And I think this next generation that's coming into work, they're already realizing that you don't have to have this 9 to 5 sitting, going to work, sitting at a desk and then coming home. You can do almost anything virtually. So I think the managers and the supervisors, and they need to be more mindful and understanding that there is some space to have this like openness and not like you need to be here, you need to clock in, you need to, get your 15 minutes for a break, a half-hour lunch, and then you're gone. They need to be more flexible. And I think that conversation needs to happen a lot more often.
Yeah.
And I think what I started asking was about professional development, because if your boss doesn't want to see you develop professionally, that's not the right boss for you. They should be working themselves out of a job by giving you their responsibilities and then making their job bigger, right? Higher level. And then you get some of those other tasks so that you can develop your skills. And they should have those like quarterly, bi-weekly meetings, whatever, to check in with you to see not just how you're doing professionally, but mentally, right? We're all experiencing something that we've never experienced before. So I think it's time to stop thinking so corporately and start talking to the individual.
I agree. And Mel, you have a healthcare background, right? You nursing. So this is something that I'm really interested, since May is Mental Health Month, and this is actually very appropriate that we're talking about this. And Joss, you and I have had many conversations about caring for our mental health, how it's part of our self-care practice. And what I keep seeing is the numbers, especially from the National Mental Health Institute, of depression and anxiety just keep going up and up and up and up. And my concern as an executive coach to corporate, to the United States military, is that we're going to have a second wave of pandemic, and it's going to be mental health and breakdowns. Okay. So Mel, I'm going to throw this to you first because of your healthcare background. And even though she's got an amazing mobile notary company that if anybody needs it, and yes, you need a notary. We just refinanced our house. And had I known Mel did it, I would have called her. But we got this other guy who came to our house. Notaries are really important. Call her. Okay. But from your perspective, from a healthcare perspective, and like, let's take the healthcare community into consideration because they've been hit the hardest. Right. What are you seeing? What are you two seeing in your work landscape that is kind of indicating that people are a little bit, I mean, for me, I'm seeing fatigue, I'm seeing depression, I'm seeing anxiety, but are you seeing anything else manifest in the workplace?
That people's tempers are definitely like, what didn't bother you 2 years ago, it will send you over the edge now. As an emergency room nurse, there's always chaos and we're used to that. But after 2020 and everything that everybody saw, and it's like what you see on the news is like 2% of what people were with nurses were really living. And I think a lot of the frustration comes from people, like nobody's talking about it. They're like, there's almost like a hush order on nurses and doctors to talk about what's really going on in the hospitals. They don't want to, people don't want to talk about it because they don't want to lose their job. They're afraid to lose their job. And you get threatened with losing your job. Like if Fox 29 is outside, you can't talk to them. You have to go straight to your car.
Right.
Like
right.
So on top of the, you know, the depression, the pandemic, the anxiety, now you're telling us we can't talk about it. Only with each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't help you because you're just as stressed as our stress levels and our anxiety levels are the same. So it's just like, how can we help each other?
Yeah. Well, and Jos, I'll toss it to you after this statement, but I'm friendly with Stephen Klasko, who I think both of you know. And I said to him, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic last year, I emailed him and I was like, how are you doing? This is not a pitch. I'm just checking in on you. And his response was, I'm not going to need you now. He said, but I'm going to need you after for the PTSD that my people are experiencing on the front lines. And he said, people like you are more important now more than ever. So I went out and got a trauma-informed certificate to make sure that I was prepared, because I've had PTSD myself, but you know, I didn't have a framework and the vocabulary to work people through it. But I was like, okay, if he's seeing it on that level, like obviously, like you said, Mel, like we're not seeing this stuff. I mean, and working with the military, so I work with them on emotional intelligence and emotional well-being. And it's the same thing. It's like, you know, rub some dirt on it, kid. I don't care if you're hurt, which is what our mothers used to say to us. You know, right? Oh, you're hurt? My grandmother would go, it's growing pains. You're fine. Go. You know? But from your perspective, Josh, from the corporate perspective, like besides short-temperedness and irritability and all of that, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing coworkers that have children particularly struggle because is their daycare open? Do they feel safe enough to send their kid to daycare? When they're home, depending on the age of the child, they have to work and take care of that child. So they don't get a break. So when someone's placing a meeting on your calendar and then sees an opening and places another meeting and then another one, that starts to like build up because you want to give your all to your job. But if you're taking care of a toddler, you can't do that, right? People have to be, like I said earlier, they have to be more flexible because the parents, I think, mostly are struggling if their children are young and aren't in daycare or whatever their situation is with, you know, additional caretakers. They're struggling to be able to give their all to a job while they're also giving their all to their family at the same time. It's no longer this dropping off, picking up, and in the meantime, I'm doing my job. You're doing all of this simultaneously. And it's a struggle because I think a lot of them are experiencing a different version of like a Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
So
such a perfect way of putting it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and so and I'm going to jump into coach mode here, ladies, so forgive me, but there's two things that I try to tell people. And I think of my friend, Addie, who's an executive for I think it's SAS. I'm not really sure. I can't remember, but she was telling me like how she's an extrovert and she's burnt out because she's feeding her daughters on her dining room table, working from her dining room table, and, you know, and I said, okay, well, why don't you create a commute where like, maybe, you know, at the end of the day, you box everything up and you and the girls like make this kind of ceremony of closing the box. And like, that's the end of it. The other thing that I keep trying to reiterate, which this is easier said than done. I mean, everything I teach my clients is very simple, but when you put it into practice, it's like much more difficult. But I think in our society, the misnomer is that, or the misidentification is that we need to refill our cup because it's empty. Well, my philosophy is we should never get empty.
Right.
Ever. You like if Mel and I energetically bump into each other, she gets my overspill so that I'm still full and I can keep going. And it's counterintuitive to think like you taking time for yourself is actually going to give you more time and you're going to be able to go longer. So if there are even ways when working parents, and I know this is, again, easier said than done, and this is not about shame or anything like that, but if you can grab even 5 minutes for yourself here and there, It'll build up cumulatively over time. Sorry, tripping over my tongue, obviously. But since we're talking about parents, and it's Mother's Day weekend, we might as well talk about our mothers. So
yeah.
Melanie, you want to start, or Joss, you want to start? I know about Joss's mom and Mark Anthony, and like I remember the pictures and the video I saw of the concert, and I was like, I grew up in South Florida, so like that community, your whole community, I'm like, I love you. I know how to make platanos. I know how to
Yes.
it's a staple in my diet. Like I am just a huge fan of the Puerto Rican culture and the Latinx culture, period. I just think it's probably because Italian culture is kind of adjacent to all of you.
For sure. And add Florida into there. Like, go ahead, girl, you Hispanic.
Yeah.
Well, we're loud eaters that are in everybody's business too. So, all right. So, tell me about your mom. Like, what was it like? What is she like? What do you get from her that you leverage in either the way you show up? Like, what's your relationship? Tell me about her.
Oh, she's known as the serious one. Like she's if it needs to get done, Maria is getting it done. And I get that from her. Like if something needs to get done, I'm getting it done. Organization skills, like obsessive compulsive in a way, like if I see something and I need to have it because it's going to add to my life, I get it from her. I see her doing, she's my Ray Dunn Hunter partner every weekend. So I get that from her. But on the flip side, growing up, I didn't see the fun side of her. Like my dad was the fun one. Everyone knew him or knows him as the fun one. And now growing up and having that friendship with her, I can see where she's funny. She's just a fun person that like, you are not the same person that I knew growing up. Like I was afraid of you and I'm kind of still afraid of you now. But she's so much fun and I just love talking to her. She's like another best friend that like, I didn't know this version of her existed because she was like, she was in charge my whole life, our whole lives.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that you said that you're afraid of Maria because I'm afraid of Irene.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I'm afraid of Hilda.
Sure. Yeah. And I can about Hurricane Hilda. Just wait. But Irene will sit there and raise her eyebrow. Like, and I get that too, like, because I do it to my clients and I'll be like, okay, I got to go to the ladies' room because you're making me nervous and I'm about to wet my pants. Like she's 5'4", you know what I mean? And like, can level you with one look, like, and I'm a 45-year-old woman. Like I shouldn't be afraid of my mother, but I am.
Raises that eyebrow, you're like a 12-year-old girl.
Yep.
Scary.
Okay. So tell me about the hurricane that is your mother.
Oh, good old Hurricane Hilda, who I absolutely adore. Growing up, like almost military style, like very militant. I talked about that on our podcast. Like we weren't one of those households where you walked in and there was toys and like you knew that there were children in the house by the photos on the wall because everything else was immaculate. To this day, that's right. Like all that playpen in the middle of the living room, absolutely not at Hilda's house. Mm-hmm. I don't even know where the name came from, but there have been situations where she's like spiraling and ready to curse everybody out. And I'll have to warn somebody like, all right, Hilda's on that like category 5 right now. Maybe you should deliver that news next week when she comes.
So funny because my cousins used to call Irene the warden because it was like she'll brag to people. She's like, yeah, I taught Kelly how to make her bed at 4.5 once. I was like, yeah, because I was scared shitless of you. And if I didn't,
Hilda takes pride in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah, I did it and I'll do it again.
So besides getting caught by the truant officer and not going to school, like give me a time, like I can tell you, I'll tell you a story about Irene. Like here comes the bougie. You ready? So club in a gated community in Florida, which is a shock because there are no gated communities in Florida. And of course I'm being sarcastic. But there was like this stand of Florida pines, right? And on the like there were probably a group about like 20 trees, right? And there were pine needles. And I thought, I'm 10. I was like, okay, let's make a campfire. the neighborhood kids.
Oh.
Well, I had a lighter somehow, don't know how, set the needles on fire and they started kind of going out of control. So I stamped it out with my foot, and I remembered stop, drop, and roll because, that's what was on the TV. And I was like, hey, this wasn't a good idea. All right, let me get back to the house. So I go walking back to the house, and there's my mom in the street, and I see her go. And I'm like, oh shit, she can smell me. So
She knows.
I go walking in, and she's like, where's the fire? And I go, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Kelly, I can smell you. You smell like a campfire. Were you burnt? I was like, no, Mom. She goes, remember, lying is going to get you a worse punishment. I was like, okay. She's like, oh my God, you could have burned down all those houses. And imagine if those children, and like on and on and on. I was grounded for a month. It was
Everything you didn't think about because you were 10.
I didn't think about. I was 10 and I was playing campfire. So yeah, so that was one of the worst things. There's other things that I did in my life that I will share with you off air, but not now. That were not my favorite moments in my life. But Irene was very, let's say both eyebrows were up and I was in big trouble. So, okay, Jos, you have to tell me, you're like organized and OCD, and you're one of those amazing people that I know that probably didn't do anything bad in her life, right?
I don't think I did. I'm sure I have. I do remember Maria making me quit cheerleading because I had a boyfriend.
Okay.
Like I don't know how one was related to the other. I guess that was just my punishment. Like
boyfriend because you joined the cheerleading school.
Yeah. So I joined cheerleading. She found out I had a boyfriend, and a month later I was no longer a cheerleader. So I think I like cheered at 2 games maybe.
Okay.
And that was it. That was it.
That's
the only story I could think of.
Did you ever talk back to her or argue or anything?
No, never.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was scared, but I used to like to push those buttons.
Oh, me too. Me too. And get the last word in. Yeah.
So I'm the first daughter. My sister is the second child. She'll talk back. She talks back now. And I sit there and I'm like, oh, why are you doing that? And I'm older than her. Like I can talk back. I have opinions. I can say stuff.
Right. But I won't.
And I won't. But Ashley will.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley definitely will.
And what about you, Mel? What have you done that has set Hurricane Hilda to a 5?
I think I kept her at a 5 during my adolescence. I'm pretty sure I kept her at a 5. I think my very first memory of getting in trouble, I might have been about 6 or 7. And I decided I wanted to like drive the house away. So what do I need? I need keys and I need an outlet. So I stuck the key in the outlet. And once the sparks flew and the blackness went against the wall, I decided that wasn't a good idea. And I put the keys back and I went back to my room. And she's like, what? I'm like, it's all of it. Like, of course, I was like, my favorite thing was, I don't know.
Deny. Yeah.
Deny. That might have been, I think that was like my first memory of getting in trouble. But I was always in trouble. And I think that I'm pretty sure I did it on purpose because I got compared to my sister and how perfect she was and how she never got in trouble. So I was like, all right, so I'm going to be the exact opposite. that's just what it was. And we are, when it comes down to like school and how we, like Josh said, how we speak to our mother or the relationship with our mother is different because we're so different.
Now, is this Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting because in school, I have one younger sister. She's 4.5 years younger. I was like golden child. And then now I'm just complete opposite. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that's it. And like, oh, well. So
she is now too. She's like, oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
Like I'm me.
Yeah. She's just kind of flipped. My sister has flipped to that like kind of perfectionist sort of. I love my sister, but that perfect piece is just a little bit meeting. So, but talk to me about what Maria and Hilda taught you about being women, like, and women in business. Like, what lessons did you learn from them over the years?
I think so. Just like being a woman, more so for me, from my mom and from my grandmother, it was always like, when you leave the house, you're a representation of your household. Don't go outside in pajama pants and flip flops in the middle of the day. Like, get yourself together. Like, yes, we live in North Philly, but we don't have to look like we live in North Philly. And she's probably the reason why I'm bougie. But
Connecting the dots.
It's all coming together.
I love it. It's all clicking into place.
Yeah. But she definitely instilled that, and my sister and I, until this day, we're both the same. And I definitely will judge people when I see them in the middle of the day in their pajama pants. Like, that's because you wasn't raised by Hilda. As far as women in business, I don't recall any conversations. And I think it was just like, my mom she's not the entrepreneur. She is the traditional 9 to 5. So from her, more so, I got like work ethic and, just do the work, be a hard worker and your work ethic. And my dad is more the free spirit, the entrepreneur. He has a bar over here. He opened the store over there. He's all over the place. So I think that is like, yes, I have my mom's work ethic. I'm a workhorse, but at the same time, I have this free spirit of my dad where I'm like, I want to do everything and I want to be the boss of my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. How about you, Jess?
I think I got my work ethic from both parents. They always showed me what hard work looked like, and we never struggled. At least I never felt like we struggled. They were factory workers their entire lives, and they both just retired. And they wouldn't miss a day of work because they felt like it, right? Like now we could take a mental health day and that there's nothing wrong with that. Right. They wouldn't. They were hard workers through and through. Never missed a day unless they were like almost on their deathbed sick with the flu or something like that. And always prided themselves in taking care of us, making sure that we were good. To Melanie's point, we were always like dressed to the nines whenever there was a family event or we were going somewhere. They took us on vacations. Like they taught us what hard work looked like. And I definitely got my work ethic from both of them. And my passion for like making sure that we're all okay. They always made sure that we were okay. So that's what I do now. Like I just make sure we're all okay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's just so interesting how your parents can imprint on you and, even model some certain behaviors that you don't expect. Like, I never planned on being an entrepreneur ever. Like this was not the plan. But, looking back, my dad, so he was a professional golfer on the PGA Tour, which that seems like it's really glamorous, but you're really a 1099, you know? And what fascinated me about your podcast was when you were talking about the 9 to 5 job versus entrepreneurship. And as I was listening, I was like, oh God, I could never go back to 9 to 5. I just couldn't. And I work more now as a business owner, which I'm fine with. I'm really fine with. And I actually prefer,
right.
Yeah. And I can, as I was listening to you talk about the mental health day, I heard, so my grandmother, my mom's mom, her name was Mary or Maria. And she was the one who'd be like, oh yeah. I'd be like, Grandma, I can't go to school. Oh, really? It's growing pains. You're fine. Go. Right. I could hear myself trying to explain a mental health day to her. She'd be like, no, she'd
generation.
Right. She didn't graduate high school. She and my great grandmother were piece workers in factories in Brooklyn. And I think, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this, because I think we're of the same mind, but I'm never going to assume that is that there's something about the struggle. Like, do I like it? No, but I think there's valuable learning in struggling and working hard and earning something rather than having it handed to you. Like, nobody put anything into this business but me. Like there is no family money. Like this was built from nothing. I had $75 in my bank account when I started and 30 went to my business license. So, it was well spent. Yeah, it absolutely. And 12 years later, here we are. I had again, this was not the plan. So I'm just wondering, like, especially with you, with your new business and Jos with Beachbody and like the podcast, and we want to get them to $57,000 a month in revenue, by the way. So whoever wants to donate to them, do donate. But what do you see in terms of the value of the struggle, and what needs to go into creating all of this? Because I think there's people are like, oh, it's easy.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
Piggybacking off of what you said, it is rewarding when you do something for yourself. So when I went to take my notary exam, and I passed on the first time, I'm gonna toot my own horn. But when I went to take, thank you. When I went to take my notary exam and I passed, I was like, I felt even better about that than I did when I passed my state exam for nursing. Because for nursing, I knew like, okay, I have to do this. I'm gonna work at this hospital and blah, blah, blah. But the notary felt better because nobody told me to do that. I did that for myself. I had to go out there, find the research. I had to go out there and get the books, take the time to study, schedule the test, do all that. Like, you don't realize how much you rely on your employer to give you a deadline or a timeline, and you're always working on all these timelines and you have all these dates. But when you work for yourself, you don't have a timeline. So if you don't start getting your stuff together, it could be a month later, you still haven't opened that book.
Yep.
Like something I got from I'm developing characteristics from Jos. Like, she's the master of planning, and she has this beautiful content calendar. And I'm like, next month, because you start way early, so I'm gonna start planning for June now so that I can have everything all laid out.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
It's more rewarding when you do it for yourself. Or at least for me, it is.
It is, and I agree with you 100%. I just think that there is this, and this is not a judgment, it's just an observation, but there is this belief that employment or is just like I said, it's easy, it's handed to you, whatever. And I'm like thinking, well, tomorrow I'm going to be working on my script for my master class that I'm doing for my alma mater on Monday. Like, they're
not working.
Yeah, we don't stop working. So Josh, and then when you were talking about the content calendar, I was like, thank God I have Bree. Bree is my social media manager. And she's like, this month we're doing this. And I'm like, that's what I need, because I don't think that way. I'm like, oh, it's May the 4th. Okay, let's.
Right. That's what I was like, Josh, can you send me your calendar so that I know what I have to do? Because I'm just like, what day is it? What's going on?
Yeah. So for you, Josh, let's talk about the struggle and like what it takes to do a podcast and do Beachbody. Like, I mean, I remember when I was in prepaid legal, all the training and the work and everything that went into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to both of your points, people have this misconception that like, I'm going to work for myself and I'm going to be a girl boss and I'm going to like have a flexible schedule and I'm going to have this financial freedom. It doesn't happen that way, right? Like, we're still working towards, hopefully that's the goal. And if you go into it for that financial, like, bottom line, you're coming into it for the wrong reason, first of all. And second of all, working for yourself is so much harder than working for a boss. Mm-hmm. It's going to work because you really believe in what you're doing. So the podcast, like, it is every time Mel edits an episode and she sends it to me and we're hearing it like for the first time, I'm like, oh, we're so funny. I love us. This is great. This is going to be a great episode. And it's like hearing it all over again. So we get that excitement, that joy, that passion that we have for it. It happens all over again every single week. So I don't want to speak for Mel, but I know that I'm doing it for the right reasons. Like, this is what I want to do.
Feels good.
Yeah. There's this feel good moment every single week. And then with the Beachbody, that just happened after, being in the middle of the pandemic, like everyone else. and trying to figure out, like I stumbled across it. I was trying to figure out what my morning routine was going to be, because I heard like every successful person has a morning routine. So I was trying to figure out what that was going to be. And I was on YouTube and found, who ended up being my coach, her morning routine, and her workout was done early in the morning, and her workout clothes had avocados on them. And I'm like, this is me on YouTube. Like, that's me. So it just happened out of this like want to like be better, do better, and get healthier. And it finally stuck, right? After years of like going to the gym and being on diets and doing, everything else that everyone does, I found something that worked for me. And it wasn't this thing that I came into because I wanted to make money off of other girls and be a girl boss. Like, I wanted to share what I was doing and what worked for me. And I know that like my customers or my team are people who look and think and act like me because they've struggled for so long. And now this can work for them too, right? I always say, like, I'm not a unicorn. Yeah. I'm your average. I'm basic. This worked for me. I think it could work for you. And that's why I enjoy sharing Beachbody so much and wanting to be this coach, this fitness mentor for other people, because it worked for me. And just like with the podcast, like the stories that we share, we hear from people all the time, like, I went through the same thing, or that happened to me, or it's just, we're relating to people with our passion and our joy. So that makes it all worth it. So if I have to create a content calendar to make sure like we're on top of stuff, like it's what we need to do. We.
My calendar.
Well, so what is your morning routine? And I'll share mine because, I'm the same way. Like, that's why I became a coach, was because in corporate, in 11 years in corporate, I had one good boss, one out of 11 years.
I believe it.
And literally, I believe bosses can show you one of two things: who to be and who not to be. So that's literally, besides the certifications and always being in class and stuff like that, I just looked at what they did badly and told people to do the opposite. And that's literally what it was. But so for my morning routine, I'm usually up at 5. And then I do this thing called RPM, which is rise, pee, and then meditate. So I drop right into meditation, and it works for me because I'm not awake and I don't have to fight all these like voices in my head. And yes, there are voices in my head. And then it's usually a workout and shower and eat, and then right into coaching sessions. So for you, I see you working out all the time, which I'm always cheering you on, because, we've kind of been on parallel fitness journeys. So talk to me about your morning routine, and then Mel, I want to hear about yours.
Oh, okay.
So I get up somewhere between 4:30 and 5, depending on like my sleep schedule. And then I get into meditation. I get into 1 or 2 workouts, depending on like the intensity level of it. And then I get into like a daily goal of journaling. So I have this like 31-day thing that I follow. And then when it's over, I go right back into it. And I set my goals for the day. I highlight like my top 3 goals for that day. And then I get into, shower, make breakfast, and then get into the 9 to 5 job, so that, when that's over, then I get right back into whether it's the podcast or the coaching. But I make sure to like make time for all of that. So I literally like map out like 4:30, I'm doing this, 5 o'clock, I'm doing that, 5:45, I'm doing this. And I try to keep on schedule with that. And I make that plan the night before. So like, it's just right there. I wake up and I go right back into it.
Wow, she really is organized like that. I'm like, go to the bathroom, drop into meditation. Go.
I really got my shit together here.
Yeah. Okay. What is your morning?
So my current morning routine is watching Jos exercise while I make coffee, and keep telling myself that I'm going to do the same thing, but I do not have a morning routine, and I am actively working on creating one, because I see the value in it. I know how important it is. I naturally wake up at the crack of dawn because I used to have to be at the hospital at 6:45 in the morning. So I'm just like, by 5:30, I don't need an alarm. I'm already waking up. Mm-hmm. So my excuse for not getting out of bed is just I don't feel like it. But that can't be the excuse anymore because I'm going to hold myself accountable when I have my content calendar in June.
There you go. There you go. And listen, it took me forever to get a morning routine, and it's a trial and error thing.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think these things are binary or one way or another. It's try what works for you, and then, you know, if it doesn't work, try something else. So,
yep.
Okay. So what's the vision like for the podcast? What are you hoping for? What are you hoping that this turns into?
Do you want to go first?
I can say, I think what I hope it turns into, it's like you're just talking to your best friends and you're, you know, it's like you're dropping in on a conversation that you've probably had already or that you can relate to. You know, every once in a while, a special guest or, you know, even between us, we have some information to share for like your education. So it's a little education, but mostly entertainment and something that you can listen to in the background or you can like actively engage. So that's kind of how I see it and how I see it going. Got it.
Okay. Mel, what do you see?
I see it similarly. I feel like we try to pick topics that are relatable to us, that we think are going to be relatable to other people. Like Josh said, like I want to my dream would be to like run into a stranger and then to be like, oh, you're Boujie from the, oh, I feel like I know you. I want you to feel like you know me because we are being our 100% authentic selves. Then you asked me the question about my morning routine. I don't have one. I watch Josh do hers, but I'm working on it. Like we are just as authentic as we want to be on the show. Like that's why we say when you come, you can curse, we drink, we have fun, we talk about silly things, we talk about serious things, but I wanted to be relatable. I wanted to feel homey.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that when I turned 40 5 years ago, I can't believe I'm saying that, but I just made a conscious decision that anything that I consume, I want it to make me feel something, like whether it's music or a movie or even a workout, I want to get lost and feel something. And when I was listening to you two, I was like, and because I know Joss, like I could feel you, like I feel you, and I feel your energy, and it's so wonderful and so playful, and like it just, I don't know, it feels like stepping into a warm bath. It's like, oh
I love that.
And there is something I do want to talk to you two about that's a little bit difficult, and I'm probably going to tiptoe into it, maybe not. Listen, diversity, equity, inclusion. Okay. That's like a big topic, right? And, you know, as a white woman, like I sit there and I just look at some of this stuff and shake my head. And I know none of it is new for any member of the marginalized community. But the thing that really sets me off are the things like, after the Derek Chauvin trial, you see all of these corporations coming and we stand with George Floyd and his family. And then meanwhile, behind the scenes, all of us know that they're treating their marginalized members of marginalized community like shit. So what would you say to somebody who is a member of the Latinx community, the Black community, women, whatever, in corporate that are experiencing this kind of, let's call it oppression, okay? How do you combat that? And how do you combat it, and how do you know when to tap out and give up?
I think for my like personal experiences, and I'll go back to nursing school, we had maybe 80 students in the class, and I was one of 5 students of color. And in addition to that, they were all from like a pretty well-off neighborhood. I made sure I commuted. I got up there, you know, I made sure that I created that opportunity for myself. And they were I remember feeling like we had classroom discussions, and I remember feeling like these people don't know what I'm talking about because they're not even from the same neighborhood. Like we're speaking English, but we're not even speaking the same language because you live in this like bubble of your community and I live in the real world. Yeah. And at the time I was working in the hospital and in the emergency room, and just even conversations with students where they really think like it's like the movies. And I was like, no, I'm going to burst your bubble. This is what it really is.
Yeah.
This is what the real world is. Yeah. And I think with school, I found my group of people where we kind of just like gravitated towards each other, and we helped each other out. And they actually were very good about having teachers of color to like mentor us and talk to us and make us feel like you know, you're not a number here, you're family like everybody else. And they truly made us feel that way.
Yeah.
I've had situations, of course, at work where I'm like, I want to say something, but I want to keep my job. So I combat that mostly with like talking to my sister. I call her normally or call my mom right away when something like that happens. I'm like, this happened, this is pissing me off, whatever. But I go to my support people, like my village, my mom, my sister. Those are my first two people that I contact when I'm feeling uncomfortable or when I feel like something is being done unfair. But eventually you have to know when to tap out, because that will weigh on you.
Yeah. And like, you know, there have been times when I joke, and this is not a funny joke, but every job I've ever worked in, I've been sexually harassed, you know, including the one I'm holding now.
Right.
So, and there are times when I'm like, I want to reach across the table and throat punch you right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that Philly is a small town, and I want to continue working and living here in peace. So I'm just going to let you go with your ignorant self and like be done with it. But Josh, what about you? What are
So when I used to work for the Boy Scouts, I definitely felt that, you know, the Boy Scouts have a reputation of being like an old boys network. And early 30s Latina coming in was like, it felt odd, right? I could feel that it was odd, not amongst the staff, but amongst volunteers.
Right.
And it wasn't until like I saw the disconnect when so I was in charge of the inner city community or the programs that were going on mostly in the inner city as after school programs to offer scouting to youth that for other reasons wouldn't be able to participate, whether it's financially or, you know, a single parent household or just didn't have the resources, whatever those resources were. We tried to offer that to them. And it wasn't until I had a meeting in a volunteer's house with my boss at the time, who I still love to this day. If we ever have an episode about like amazing bosses, like that is like my number one like person. Yeah, that's a short one.
Very short.
So going with my boss at the time to this volunteer's house, and she lived on the main line, had an amazing troop and like all the stuff you see in like the movies about what Boy Scouts are, like that was their troop. And we were telling her about what we needed and how we wanted like those troops to help our troops so that they can have that same experience of scouting, right?
Yeah.
And she just didn't get it, right? And it was just she hadn't been exposed to that kind of experience, and she just didn't get it. And she thought that she needed the help. Like, why can't I get more volunteers and I get more of like what you're offering these kids as like a stipend or something, you know, at a lower cost, for lack of a better term. And it wasn't until then that I realized like there are really some people who just don't understand the struggles of, right? They just don't get it. Luckily, where I work now, there are D&I groups, and there's leadership in place that helps those groups network and professional development and think outside of their, you know, cubicle. So that's been really good to see that being the thing that people are focusing on now kind of come to fruition in the role that I am now, where, you know, just a handful of years ago that wasn't happening.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, and I will tell you, you know, I've been one of those people that has centered whiteness. Like I've been, you know, in that situation myself, not for a very long time, where it was like, well, why can't you help me? And it's like, you gotta safely. Like, what do you think? You know what I mean? Or my parents will tell me stories. I'm like, are you even living in the real world? Because this is not the fact that this guy cannot take his 200-foot yacht from Florida to Bahamas because he has to quarantine for 2 weeks. That's not a real problem. Okay. I've found myself in this unique position where I'm constantly talking about this, and I'm talking about it to the military, that's always interesting. Like, I had this one guy who was like, I'm not racist. I was like, you're white in America. You are racist. So am I. Mm-hmm. I was like, and he's like, what do you mean? And I go, it's not a person. It's not an event. It's a system of processes and procedures that literally oppress other people. And by the end of the conversation, he looked at me and he was like, you've literally changed how I'm going to lead. And I was like, good, here's a bunch of books, read them. It's our job as the white community to fix this because we built it. Mm-hmm. It's our job, but these are not conversations that I like. Right. This was not part of the plan. Like, right. I'm like, God, I did not want to be the person to be, but right. That's what it is. So
the voice. I didn't want to be the voice.
But what I do like is that we are having these conversations. Whether or not they're perfect, probably not, and they never will be, because we're dealing with people's emotions and lived experiences. Oh, that's another funny story I should tell you. So a couple weeks ago, we pitched Facebook because as a response to like everything that's been going on, I built a diverse coaching cohort where there's tons of diverse coaches from all over the place. Most of them are women. The good majority are women of color. We've got 4 guys, 2 of which are Black men, which is great. One's openly gay. And I mean, it's one of the things I'm most proud of, right? So Facebook gets a hold of us, right? And we're pitching them. And in the middle of it, they go, how do you measure diversity? I was like, did you not look at the catalog we put together?
Look at us.
Do you see us?
And so I couldn't because I'm literally, there's 6 people from Facebook and I'm like, hey, Kelly, you could have your wise ass alter ego come in and take over or be professional. So I chose to be professional. I said, well, we don't measure diversity. And they were like, what do you mean? And I go, they've lived, this is in their DNA on a cellular level. The whole reason I built this was because I wanted to leverage my privilege to open doors that other people won't have access to. And because of all the things we've talked about, the time, the expense, and all of that for all of these certifications that I've gotten, that Jos has been with me since we've talked about that, and so they looked at me and they go, yeah, lived experience is important. And I was like,
yeah, you think? Okay.
Part of me wanted to be like, is this thing on?
Can you hear me?
And am I crazy to think this is a weird thing? But I was just like, maybe it's just a Silicon Valley thing. Mm-hmm. But I was like, you clearly didn't read the stuff that we put, No,
you didn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird to you too, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So Jos, you've told us about great things that are happening in your organization. Have you had a moment in time where you just were like, I'm done. I'm exhausted. This is wearing on me. I noticed that my personality is changing. I'm out.
Well, my previous role, right? I just wasn't happy. It was just, I was going through the motion. It wasn't fulfilling. Yeah. The way that I thought it would be. I thought I would be able to add something more to it, and I wasn't able to. So I was able to recognize that a little, later than I had wanted to. And sometimes I'm like, oh, why didn't the previous person tell me? I don't think that person should have told me, right? I could have had a completely different experience, and I didn't know what that person's experience was. So yeah, I just, at that point, that's really the only time that I was like, I've had it. But it didn't have to do with diversity and inclusion and, equality or anything. It was just poor leadership in that role.
Yeah, that's a prevalent problem across a lot of organizations. What about you, Mel? Was there ever a time when you were just like, I'm done?
Well, with my previous employer, I when you just said personality change, I felt that happening. I'm like, okay, I've been in this role for a year now. I've been working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We had a discussion that after a certain amount of time, I would have control over my schedule and things would be a little bit more flexible. Long story short, I brought that up to the owner and she was just not really feeling that conversation. Fast forward a week later, she let me go. So I was like, all right, well, you did it for me. But, that was already, I had already I feel like I manifested that because I was already like, okay, I don't like the way I feel. I feel like I don't have control over my life. I feel like I'm a slave to this desk. This isn't working for me.
Yeah.
So she did it for me.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one last question and we'll go into the rapid fire. But what's one thing that you all would hope to communicate to our audience to drive them over to Basic and Boujie? What's one thing? And you can each have one. So
come get some new friends. Come over to the Basic and Boujie page. Come meet some new friends. When we have guests on, our first guests were like my sister, our friends, you can be Beyonce, Cardi B, or you can be like, you know what? I just started watching your podcast and I have a topic I want to talk about. Come on, get on the show. Like we want you to feel like we are all friends.
Cool.
Yeah. Come and hang out.
Yeah. And how about you, Joss? Anything to add?
Just to piggyback off of that, I think we all have a voice. Like I used to think like nobody wants to listen to me. Like it's an uneventful life. Like nothing's happened to me. Of course, something's happened to you. Like we all have experiences. We all share similarities. We all have differences. Like come on the show and be a voice and listen to us have that voice. Like two people who, you're two regular girls from Philly. Like you can have a voice and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, hopefully I'll get an invitation, but I don't know if I'm bougie or basic enough. So
you are. We'll figure it out and we'll put it on Joss's calendar.
Yes.
Yep.
She will contact your people, and then somewhere along the line, somebody's going to tell me.
Yeah.
Well, and we have to have drinks, definitely. But
yeah.
So I'll start with a new rapid fire question. What's your drink of choice? Like last drink you're ever going to have right before you kick it?
Oh, probably the drink that we had the last time, which is that I really like that pineapple Malibu rum.
Nice. Okay. Yes.
Margarita, 100%.
So there is a place here in Ardmore called Ripplewood, and they make an avocado margarita, and it is unbelievable.
How am I just finding out about this?
It's frozen, so you have to come visit me because.
Yes. After this, I'm calling you so we can set up a date.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Favorite comfort food.
If I want to get my hands dirty, I'll go and get some crab legs steamed and make myself a little butter sauce. I love it. That's my comfort food that makes me happy, that brings me joy.
Okay.
If I don't want to get my hands dirty, I'll either make something here like a traditional Spanish rice, beans, meat, or I'll call Hilda and have Hilda make it for me.
Oh man, I might crash Hilda's house.
And she loves to feed people. If you like to eat, she'll love
us. She really does.
Does she make platanos?
Yes, she does. And totones, maduro, all of them. She makes it all. If she can have a plantain tree in the back of her house in Hunter Park, she would.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language. My husband's a chef, so like.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. No, don't think it's lovely because I very rarely it's not like.
It's not all as cracked up to me.
Like he was like, "You hungry?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "What do you want for lunch?" I said, "Salad." He goes, "Okay, I'll order sweet green." I was like,
but you're a chef.
So,
okay, Joss, favorite comfort food besides avocados. We already know avocado.
Right.
Yeah, besides that. So if I'm craving something like comfort food, like home comfort food, I would, anything that my mom makes now, obviously now she has to like eliminate some stuff, like the way she used to make rice and beans and all that. She makes it differently for us. But if I'm treating myself, it's a pliable. Like I can every single day I can have one.
What am I thinking? Of course it's a pliable. I see
Yeah.
it every day. It's a pliable.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So what books are on your nightstands, Mel?
I just actually, well, not the physical book, but I just downloaded, what's it called? Is it Atomic Bomb or Atomic Habits? Again, trying to create healthy habits and a morning routine. I'm like, all right, let me sit down and read this. I keep hearing good reviews about it. So that's what I'm currently reading.
I've heard that's really good. Okay, Joss.
I'm trying to finish Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I've heard about it so many times. I'm halfway through. I keep, since he talks about numbers, and numbers have never been my thing, and spreadsheets and assets and all that. That's the part I struggle with. Yeah. But that's what I'm currently reading right now.
That's a good one. So The Game of Money by Tony Robbins is really good too. But you get into that point where they start talking about that, and you're like,
yeah.
Right. And like, do they have the audio book version of this? Because
definitely. Okay. So what's on your playlist right now? Besides Cardi B, which we are huge fans of Cardi B in this podcast here. Huge. Yeah. Bodak Yellow was my theme song for a long time. Still is. But besides that, what's on your playlist, Jess?
Bad Bunny.
Nice.
Bad Bunny. And it's funny because Kyle, my boo, he tells me about what just came out. So Sesh is another Latino trap artist. Mm-hmm. He just came out with another album. So now I've been listening to 42 for almost nonstop every time we're in the car. So that's another one. So those two, reggaeton is super big right now with us.
Man, it's that's South Florida to a T. It's
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Brian works at Whole Foods. He does catering for Wynwood, the location, and he always comes home and he's like, "Have you heard this song?" I'm like, "How do you hear this song?
Where are you that you hear this song?"
Because he's in the kitchen and they all play a ton of. And when he came walking down the stairs singing Taylor Swift, I was like,
"What's happening?"
All right, I'll let you have that.
Right.
All right, Mel, what's on your playlist?
I'm currently in a female rap mode, female artist mode. So I started creating a playlist and I named it Boss Up. And it's Cardi B, Meg Thee Stallion, Mulatto, some old Foxy Brown, some old Nicki Minaj, that gets me going. That's you know what? These are some badass women. Let me get my shit together.
Yes. Yes. And I don't know if you would be willing to share that playlist with me, but I would
absolutely
love to have it. So, okay, final question. What are you most grateful for in this moment right now?
Life in general, real simple, because we've been saying it, but 2020 was a struggle. And just when as cliche as it sounds, when you open your eyes and you take that breath, that's a blessing, because everybody didn't get to do that this morning.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my family's health throughout all of this. I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. How about you, Joss?
I have to mimic that. Life, just all of us being here through a time that no one thought, we never thought in our wildest dreams that something like this would happen. And the fact that it did, and it opened the doors for so many different things for us this year. I'm just so grateful for life. So grateful.
I know. I call them the gifts of COVID. I really do. I think, having a deeper relationship with my husband and normalizing Zoom so I can work with somebody in Turkey and Africa and you know what I mean? Those things are so great. But I can tell you that I'm just grateful to have this interaction with the two of you. And Mel, I'm so glad that you're now in my orbit. I know,
I'm so excited about this. I love it.
And I'm really excited. I know how to pronounce Jess's name. Dude, if that ever happens, you better grab me and be like, listen, this.
Okay.
So, if people want to subscribe and possibly contribute to Basic and Boujie, how will they do that?
So we are on a couple different platforms. We would love for people to go on YouTube and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're I was like, oh, we got 55. We got somebody new here. I watch those numbers. But yes, Basic and Boujie podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, Patreon.
Okay.
Did I miss any, Joss?
Instagram, if you want to see some fun reels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instagram.
What are your Instagram handles? Give me those so we can make sure that we get some followers for you too.
So our podcast page is Basic and Boujie Podcast. My personal one is @_Mela.nation.
Okay.
And mine is Yasseline_Diaz for Instagram.
Okay. So the other one that I have, the one that starts with C, is that not working anymore? Or?
That's because I'm Joss. That was like my first Instagram handle. I have it just because I like the pictures there, but once like the pandemic hit, I wanted a whole new handle to like start a whole new vibe, because some of the people I was following there, I feel like they're a little negative, or not where I'm at right now.
You take everybody on the next journey. Some of them
you
don't
can't.
Even
You gotta leave some of them behind. Yeah.
Right. And if anybody's poking holes in the side of your boat instead of picking up an oar, bye. You're going overboard. I'm done.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
I love you too. I love you to pieces, and I'll do anything I can to help you. And to our listeners on Hidden Human, it's our intention that this podcast inspires you to go out and have authentic conversations to deepen the connections in your life. Because really, that's all life is about, right? Emotional connections and bonds. So let's deepen those. And thank you so much, and make it a great day.
Thank you. Same to
Thank you.
You've been listening to Hidden Human, the stories behind the business leader. If you've enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. To learn more about Kelly and the services she provides, visit youloudandclear.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.